So welcome everybody. Thanks for chatting with me at first to get us started. My name's Paula Carey, and I'm pleased to be here tonight to talk to you about developmental and therapeutic intervention groups. So the focus here is on intervention and how we use groups to achieve that. As I mentioned before we started officially, I'm really pleased that Therapeutic continues to offer these online office hours, other than an occasional holiday, or like last week was the AOTA conference in Orlando. What a great place to be. I wished I'd been there, but I wasn't, so I missed it. Next year's in Philadelphia. So I don't have the dates memorized, but next year's Philadelphia, if you want to go, that'd be great. Those of you in the Northeast, it's easy to get to. And then it starts going west, but I don't remember exactly where it's going to be. Anyway, um, we did change the topic for tonight, and I apologize if you were expecting pre-vocational and work information. That will be next Tuesday. So please come back and join us for that. That will be with Rita Fleming Castaldi. So I just want to tell you a little bit about myself. I've been an occupational therapist for over 40 years. I started my life in occupational therapy by going to an OT assistant program at a community college, and it truly changed my life in all kinds of positive ways. So I have an associate's degree in OT assistant and took that certification exam and passed it. And back then, it was only offered once every 6 months. If you didn't pass it, you had to wait 6 months to take it again. And we didn't get our results for 6 weeks because we got it in the mail. So this is much better. We're in a better place, even though I know some people don't like waiting very long. So some people think waiting a week or 10 days is a lot, and I just have a different perspective. And then I went to bachelor's program, have my bachelor's in occupational therapy, took that certification exam to become an OTR. I have a master's in adult education and many, many courses in disability studies. And I got to the point where I was very close to doing my dissertation, and I decided I liked disability studies, but I loved occupational therapy. So I withdrew from Syracuse University and enrolled in Chatham University and have an OTD. So it's been OT, OT, OT for me. And I taught at Utica University for 32 years full time, and also 2 years adjunct, and have been working for Therapy Ed for 23 years now. So during that time, I've been invested in learning more about and doing literature review on what are test taking strategies? How can you better pass an exam? What's really in this exam? And how can I better step in and help people? Because as an occupational therapist, I'm sure it's why you want to be an OT practitioner too. I want to help people. That's what I'm invested in. So I'm here because I want to help you to take control over things and to move forward and conquer this exam. Whether you haven't taken it yet or you've already taken it, this is a whole new game. All right. So chin up, you can do this, and you just need to find a different way to do it if you've had trouble taking exams before, whether it's this exam or other exams in school. And you have to, I see this as a game of strategy. The name of the game, if you're going for the COTA exam, is I am a COTA. And if you're going for the OTR exam, the name of the game is I am an OTR. And it's a game of strategy. So therefore, you have to be intent and strategic in the way that you prepare for this. And part of it is making sure that you know the content. So it's my pleasure to present information to you tonight on developmental therapeutic groups. So please know that this is copyrighted information. Please don't try to save it or video it to record. It's copyrighted, therefore it's unethical for you to save it in any way, shape, or form. And by the way, please be very careful about sharing any information on Quizlet. Some people have shared exam items directly from a reference, and then instead of keeping it private, had it open, and they've been sanctioned for that from NBCOT. So please be careful about that. Don't do it. Okay. So if you have questions, please put them in the chat box. I'd appreciate if things that don't relate to this topic are later, if you could just write it down on your paper so you don't forget. I get it. You want to hurry up and ask a question, but it would be helpful if we keep those towards the end, because sometimes it's hard to scroll back and for me to see those. So I will keep up with them. In general, I'm not going to answer a question until I'm done with this brief presentation. So we will go back and get that. Okay. And if I happen to miss your question, please put it up there again or open up your mic and talk to me. All right. So I'm asking that you keep your mics off so that we don't get background noise, but certainly encouraging you to join in and turn on your mic to talk. Okay. So I don't know which review and study guide, if you have them, which version you have. So can you guys tell me that? So the OTA is the 4th edition. And that's the only one that's out. The 5th edition is coming out soon. But for the OTR, there's 2 editions. You might have the 9th and you might have the 10th. The 10th just came out recently. So anybody know which one do you have? Let me check the chat. 9th? Okay. That's what I have references for. That's why I was asking. All right, let me check the. Okay, so I have a few 10th edition pages, and I'm going to show you the 10th edition. Okay, thank you. So those of you who have the 9th edition, please don't feel like you should go out and buy the 10th, because of course it's been upgraded and of course there's new content in it. But the 9th edition has all the content that you need for this exam. All right, I don't want you to feel like you have to go out and buy another book that has primarily the same information. And anybody who has the 9th edition, so the OTA exam, this doesn't apply to, all right? But everybody who has the 9th edition for OT, you have access to the online exams that go with the 10th edition, because we wanted to make sure that everybody had the scenario sets. Okay, so you have those if you're using the new learning portal. Excuse me. Okay, so we're going to be talking about the must-know information. So this is a brief snapshot about groups and therapeutic groups and how to use them. And I'm going to focus a little bit more on the developmental groups because they're very commonly used in OT. So first of all, let's talk about so if you see the red, see the page number at the top, OTA and then OT. So the white is the 9th edition and the red is the 10th edition. So you can find the same information. So we need to talk about, when do you use individual intervention versus a group? The bottom line is that you use group intervention when the person will benefit more from being in a group than doing individual intervention. So think about individual. It's based on what the person's capable of learning and changing and what their current level of function is and expected level of function. But a lot of times, especially when it's biomechanical issues, musculoskeletal issues, there's a need to have one-on-one so that that person is getting the specific attention of the therapist. And sometimes there has to be hands-on activities performed. And so it also depends on the complexity of the occupation and what the person's able to do, how much cueing they need, how much they need the activity adapted for them, and when they will learn better individually versus being in a group. Also, it has on here inappropriate or dangerous behavior of the person. So if the person is not able to be a group member and not be of not be a danger to other people, then a group might work. But if they're angry, hostile all the time, then that's not going to work and they should not be in a group. So why do we use groups? Well, think about it. We live and learn in groups in a typical life. And so like interpersonal skills, it's hard to learn socialization when you're just talking to yourself, right? So we want to have people learn how to get along with others, how to interact with others effectively, to have their needs met, and to help meet the needs of the other group members. And often being in a group with people who have similar experiences or similar issues that they're facing is very beneficial to both the person who's talking about it and the person who's receiving that information. And often we use role modeling and are motivated by the performance of other people, and that helps. It's like, I'll bet for many of you, if you're studying on your own, it's a lonely endeavor, isn't it, to be studying on your own for this exam? And it helps if you have a study partner or a study group. And sometimes people have formed a study group from coming to the online office hours. So I encourage that, because I believe the easiest appointment to break is the one you make with yourself. And it helps to have some outside accountability. It doesn't mean you must have it, but it helps to have that. In fact, some people have tutoring with me. I'm also a tutor for therapy ed. So I do online office hours. I'm one of the course instructors for OT and OTA, and I also do OT and OTA tutoring. And sometimes people say that one of the things that's really helpful is to have that accountability of meeting with somebody, like say weekly or every other week. So same thing with being in a group, learning by being with other people, learning from them and helping them to learn as well. And it just gives you a different perspective. Sometimes it's really a challenge being inside your own head. And also having group norms and developing those group behaviors, because there's so many things that we do in our daily life that we do in groups. You have to be able to be successful as a group member. Hold on. There we go. And I just wanted to point out that in the therapy ed review and study guides for the OT and the OTA, you have green boxes, they're called exam hints, and it mentions why this is important for you to know this content. And so the reference would be 2022 for the 10th edition, otherwise it's the same thing. And that you have to know about groups, group participation, how to facilitate them, what the group process is, what's true about a therapeutic group, and how you as the therapist leader should facilitate those groups based on the function of your group members and the purpose of that particular group. So it's definitely something that shows up on the exam. So the exam hints are based on the fact that every 5 years, NBCOT does a practice analysis of entry-level OTs and entry-level OTAs. And they want to know what's just good enough, is the phrase they use, for entry-level practitioners. And that's what they base the exam outline on, the content outline. So what's going to be emphasized on the exam and the percentages of the domains all come from those surveys. So I'm not going to go over group process, therapeutic groups, and activity groups as a whole, but make sure that you know that information. It's really important to go back and know more about the group process and about activity groups. And we're going to talk more specifically about some others. So let's talk about group leadership. So this is not specific to the developmental groups. I wanted to make sure and bring this out for you. So you can find this in the OTA 4th edition of the Review and Study Guide, pages 51 to 52, and in the OT Review and Study Guide, page 54 for the 9th edition, 68 for the 10th edition. So I'm not going to read all of this, but I want to point out some of the highlights. So you need to consider group leadership styles and also the membership roles. So what can members do? What can you expect of them at different levels? So directive leadership is where the members need the most help. So the therapist does the planning and decision making and structures what actually goes on in the group, because the members need that kind of support. So one example of groups that might need that level of support would be people who are newly admitted to an acute care psych unit. So acute care, they're medically ill and that it's short-term stay, but they are going to need more support then because they're in an acute phase of whatever condition they have. and they've just been admitted to an inpatient unit. So that would be an example of when you would use directive. So directive leaders select the activities. They provide clear verbal cues and demonstration as necessary. They might adapt the activity based on the level of function of the group members. And they might do it step by step, certainly might give, demonstrate how to do it, show samples of a completed activity, whatever we're doing. And the group maintenance roles, so there are independent roles and there are maintenance roles. And the directive leader takes those roles on too. The members are not able to. And so what are we trying to do with a directive group? We're trying to complete the task. And we expect the members to cooperate with each other or get along with each other, but there doesn't have to be a lot of interaction because the therapist is the one that's doing that leading. Facilitative leadership. So as the members' abilities increase, I don't want to say interference, the direct strategies that the OT has to do for leadership decreases. So facilitative leadership, there's a shared function between the therapist and the group members in terms of the group process. And so in terms of engaging with each other and working well with each other. So I know it's hard. This is so like for the directive, the members' abilities are limited or they're low level of function. And members for facilitative leadership are at a moderate level. And I know that that's really vague, but you just have to keep it in perspective in comparing them to the other one. And so when we get to the developmental groups, you'll find out that that's like the egocentric cooperative or basic cooperative up to the cooperative and supportive cooperative groups. So facilitative leaders collaborate with the group members to select the activities. So it's not just the leader choosing the activity. And both the members and the leader share in instructions and helping other people to complete that activity, whatever that is. And again, it's shared maintenance roles by the members and the leader. So the leader is trying to facilitate the members' active participation and engagement in not only the activity, but in those roles as a group member. Advisory leadership is when the members are, in terms of their skills and their engagement with others, is at a high level. And so if we talk about developmental groups, that would be cooperative or supportive cooperative and mature level groups. So those are the highest levels in the developmental groups. And the members select and complete the group activities with asking the leader's advice only if needed. So the leader is really there as an advisor and sometimes as an observer participant, because the group members are able to give feedback to each other, to help meet individual needs and group needs, and to complete the task. So the focus of the group members when there's advisory leadership is to do the process, to collaborate with each other, to have needs met more than complete the activity. So the focus is on each other, not on the activity. So here's some of the major types of the activity groups, and I'm not going to go over all of those. I'm going to focus on the developmental groups. But there's evaluation group, thematic group, topical group, task-oriented group. And let me see if I can share something with you. Can you see the review and study guide here? It's not on the page I want it to be. Hold on. Thank you. I always have to check and make sure that that's showing. Sorry. I thought I had it on the right one. Here we go. So this is the 12th edition, I'm sorry, 10th edition of the OT Review and Study Guide. So the leadership styles in the 9th edition and in the OTA book are described but not in a table. Okay, the information is still there. Right, so this is what we just went through. And then the types of activity groups, again, the 10th edition has more, sorry, I'm trying to see if I can get that out of my way. The 10th edition has more information in tables and summarized differently than in the past, trying to make it more accessible and easy to find that information for everybody. Okay, so if you want to know what the different types of groups are that I just mentioned, you can find them here. So evaluation group, thematic group, topical group, task-oriented group, instrumental, and then we're going to talk about the developmental groups. Okay, I just wanted to show you that. And please, I know that you've all had in your academic program the OTPF. Please remember that the OTPF talks about the individual, group, and population approaches. So that also has information that's relevant to studying therapeutic groups. Okay, so I just wanted you to take a look at that. So then we're going to go to these groups, but I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint. Let me know if the PowerPoint isn't showing everybody, okay? So what are the developmental groups from lowest to highest? Parallel, project, which is also referred to as associative, egocentric cooperative, which is the basic cooperative, cooperative, which is now supportive cooperative, and mature. So the literature has both. That's why we have both of them on here. So these are screenshots from the 9th edition and of the Review and Study Guide for OT and the 4th edition. Is that right? Yep, 4th edition for the OTA. So a parallel group, what's the purpose? It's to enable members to do their own task within the presence of others, but they're not working with each other. So I always picture my children when they were very young playing with cars and trucks, because that's one of the favorite things they liked at that time. And so they're playing cars and trucks, and they each have their own materials. And heaven forbid, one should try to take the other person's car or truck because they weren't into sharing at all. Can you picture that? That's a parallel group. They're doing the same activity, but very limited interaction, if any, among the members. They have their own setup. So like if you're setting up a parallel group, regardless of, I mentioned children, but regardless of the age, remember that they need their own materials because they're not into sharing and they're not at that level of interaction. And so we hope that they interact some, like, did you see that or whatever. And by the way, these developmental groups follow the same sequence of the developmental sequence of play. So if you remember play, you're going to remember the groups and vice versa. So we just want them to have a basic level of awareness of other people in their vicinity, even if they have to have a little bit of distance from them, and certainly have their own materials. And we want them to start to be comfortable being within a group setting, even if they're not interacting. So here's an example. We have a small group of individuals. So the parallel groups are small and they're completing the same craft activity, but using their own materials and supplies. Questions on that? And then I have an exam hit here just to emphasize again why it's important for you to know the groups. And I would say know all of them a little bit, but make sure that you know the developmental groups. Know what we're talking about now, how the members perform with each other, what we talked about before, what's the leadership style for each of those different levels of developmental groups. And then what's an example of an activity? Because perhaps you're going to have a question related to the individuals are in a parallel group, which of the following activities would be appropriate? So you have to match it. And by the way, I really believe that NBCOT takes this little piece of information, they bring in here to the center and they turn it around and around and tip it upside down and say, now can you answer this question? That's why you may hear people say, there wasn't a single question on that exam that I studied for. Well, if you studied OT, there was content on there that you studied, but they don't ask it the same way that you learn it if what you're doing is memorizing it. So you have to think beyond just memorizing. You have to think, how's NBCOT likely to ask this question? How does this information that I know relate to practice? And not just what you did on field work, not just what you've witnessed or done, but what does the book say? And think about this. What does the book say, the text say about what do you do first for intervention? What do you do next once they make progress? And what's the best thing to do? You have to think about those things while you're studying, because NBCOT is not testing your knowledge of OT. They're testing your critical reasoning as it relates to the practice of OT. So it can be a very specific situation, and you have to use your critical reasoning to figure out, first of all, what the situation is. Secondly, what that question's really asking. And third, which is the best answer. So the next level, so we're starting lowest to highest, is project or associative. So this is developing the ability to perform a shared short-term activity with another member. And you're doing it in a very comfortable, cooperative manner. So see how it's different from the parallel? Now they're sharing materials and they're actually collaborating with each other in terms of cooperation. And so we want a little bit more interaction than just completing the activity. It's not just give me the scissors, okay? And we want the members to be able to give and seek assistance. So it's much more cooperative. And so, for example, we might have, again, it's going to be a small group completing a specific activity with shared materials. So as a therapist, you're going to set it up so they have to share materials. And the focus is not on interaction, although we want some interaction. The focus is on completing the activity. But what we're trying to do is also to facilitate some interactions. Okay? Let me know if you have questions along the way. So the next highest level is egocentric cooperative, or I like this term better, it's basic cooperative. So now they've reached the level of, in a basic way, being able to cooperate with others. So what we're trying to do is to get the members to select and implement a long-range activity, and that it requires that group interaction, that cooperation, in order to complete that long-range activity. So this one, the project associative, was short-term activity. Now we're looking at a long-range activity, and long-range has to vary depending on where the group is meeting and for how long they're going to be meeting. So what we're trying to do in this level is for the group members to get a better understanding of group goals, to be able to set cooperative group goals, and to have norms in terms of how they interact with each other in a respectful, positive interaction. So we want the members to be able to meet their needs and also help to meet the needs of other people, especially those basic needs of health and safety and well-being, that esteem they haven't mentioned here. So an example is members decide to plan a party for an upcoming holiday, and then they select what steps they're going to accomplish and how they're going to do that, who's going to do what. So they collaborate on what the activity is going to be, who's going to share responsibility, how they're going to accomplish those long-term tasks, and then they get them done. Questions? Next level group is cooperative. And see, this first, the egocentric cooperative is now usually called basic cooperative. And now this is supportive cooperative. Hear the difference? I like those terms better than just using cooperative, which is what this used to be. So it's enabling members in a group to engage in this free expression of their own ideas and feelings and opinions, and to be open to listening to other people's ideas and feelings and opinions, and to even seek them out to express those together. So this is really at that higher level. Remember Maslow's hierarchy of needs? So it's really developing trust and love and belonging and cohesion across group members. And we're using love in a broad sense here. And so we want the members to have their social emotional needs met and to help others have theirs met. So there's a dual focus of this group. It's both to complete the activity, but meet each other's needs, emotional, social, emotional needs. And for this one, for the supportive cooperative level group, the therapist, taking it back to what we talked about before, the leadership style would be advisory, as it would be for the mature. So mature group, we want the members to be able to assume all of the functional roles, all of those membership roles, all of the task roles, to plan, implement, and complete an activity, and to help other group members to develop those positive behaviors to help other people meet their needs and to help them meet their own needs while also completing the activity. But the task is of secondary importance. Of primary importance is the social emotional needs of the members of the group. So here's an example. It would be members in a psychosocial clubhouse. So here's another tip for you. Psychosocial clubhouse, members of a psychosocial clubhouse at our higher level of function. They're going to be at the supportive, cooperative, or the mature level. So these members in a psychosocial clubhouse identify needs and plan and complete a variety of activities designed to balance completion of activities with the fulfillment of individual and membership roles to meet group goals. So the group sets the goals, the group meets the goals while also meeting each other's social emotional needs. So any questions on that before we go to the question for the week? And I apologize that because it wasn't changed on the webpage, the question that was posted last Thursday and the answer on Sunday was for the pre-vocational vocational work topic that will be next week. So I'm going to give you time to answer this. Hold on, let me get my stopwatch.
I had a quick question.
Okay.
Like what group would you normally see like in an adult daycare center?
It depends on the level of function because some members in adult daycare, I'm thinking of one that I consulted to, they really needed a directive leadership style. Many of them had dementia, the group I'm thinking of. So it depends on the composition of the members that are in that particular adult daycare. Does that make sense? It depends on their level of function.
Yeah, I understand. Thank you.
But it might be so if I think back, we didn't intentionally do it, but we did some groups that were parallel and some that were basic cooperative, but none that were higher
Okay.
with the group that I worked with. Okay, I'm just getting my stopwatch so I can time you on this. So that reminds me, everybody, when you are doing practice questions, getting ready for the exam, make sure to practice the timing as well. So the leadership style that tends to be with project and egocentric. So that those would be facilitative. Some of the project groups have to be a little bit more directive, but usually it's just the parallel groups that are directive. Okay, here we go. So take your time based on the information we just reviewed. Find the best answer for this question. I'm going to put up a poll for you. So what do I mean by practice the time? Practice your timing so that you can complete the number of questions that are on your exam in the 4-hour period of time that you have. So I recommend an average of 60 questions in an hour. We'll talk about that. I'll write it down. So I'm going to read this because sometimes it helps to have it read. An occupational therapist and OTA design an intervention group focused on developing the task and social skills of group home residents. The group activity of planning a movie night will take multiple sessions to complete. Which type of developmental group will they implement? Okay, we're up to 46%. Does anybody else want to get in? We're over a minute. I don't recommend that you time each question. So A is parallel, B is project associative, C is basic cooperative, and D is supportive cooperative. All right, I'm going to share the results. So we have 71% who answered C, followed by 14% for B, 11% for D, and 4% for A, excuse me. And the best answer is B. Or I'm sorry, C. I can't even read. I looked at basic cooperative. C, basic cooperative. So planning a movie night is consistent with basic cooperative, which develops skills needed to implement a long range activity that requires an interaction of 5 to 10 members to complete. And the others are just at a different level. Does that make sense? So basic cooperative, we're looking at where they are focusing on the task skills, but also the social skills. So let me tell you a little bit about a group home in case, oh, let me check the chat, sorry. Oh, thank you for putting that in there. So a group home is for individuals who need 24-hour supervision, and they need at least supervision, sometimes assistance with ADLs. Okay, that gives you an idea of what level they're at. So the group homes that I've had any interaction with were individuals who had intellectual disabilities or developmental disabilities, and people with long-term chronic psychiatric conditions. Okay, so the big difference between basic cooperative and supportive cooperative, we just went through those, okay? So the basic cooperative, the focus is on completing the activity and identifying needs that they want to meet. So it's a long range activity, has to have group interaction, and we're really trying to have some norms across the group. And so we're trying to get the members to be part of that. Whereas, so did you hear that this one is both on meeting social, emotional needs and finishing the task? Whereas the supportive cooperative, the biggest goal here is to support each other, develop that sense of trust and belonging. And the completing the activity is a secondary of importance. Okay, why not A? All right, so let me get back here to the question. So it's not A because they're not watching a movie, they're planning a movie night. So we don't know what all they're putting into the movie night. Perhaps it's what movie they're going to watch, what snacks they're going to have, how they're going to set it up, who they're going to invite. It's not just watching a movie. Yep, it's the planning part. See, honestly, these questions require that you read every single word. That if you miss a word, it's so easy to misinterpret these questions. Yep, so I'll go back to the Why is it not project associative? Because that's a short-term activity with a very small group. Okay, does that help? Questions? I'm always glad to answer questions. That means you're thinking about the question. And this is exactly what you need to do when you do practice questions. The best ones to help you to develop your critical reasoning are the ones that have rationales. I know that there are test banks, like for instance, NBCOT study pack, that only some of them have answers and rationales, but that's because they're using the practice exams and the pretest as a way for you to know right now, in this moment, how are you doing? And they're the only ones that can give you that scale score. Please remember that none of those are predictive of how you're going to do on the actual exam. What they are indicators. Okay, there's no practice exam that's going to predict how you do on the actual exam. There are too many variables. Okay, so I just want to remind you, we have ongoing online office hours. If you've taken the Therapy Ed exam prep course, either for OT or OTA, and you've had a delay for whatever reason in taking and passing the exam, you can repeat that at no charge. So retakes are free. You just have to contact the office, look online and see which courses are being offered that are of interest to you. Some are online, some are in person. And then you can sign up for that course, all right, at no additional fee. Hold on, just having trouble with this. So these are the topics that are coming up. Therapy also has an app, and it has some really cool features in it, including artificial intelligence. So the learning assistant, you can ask questions of it. Like, let's say you have a question on, oh, I don't know, PNF. And because I'm not good at PNF, what's an example of a D1 flexion activity? And I wouldn't be able to tell you that for sure, but I can go to the learning assistant and I can type that in and it will give me that information. So it's on here. It's also in the online exams, and it's my new favorite toy because I can ask any question that I want. You have to complete, like if we're talking about the online ones. So there's 3 full online exams that come with the review and study guide, and then that has the artificial intelligence to help you to plan it. Okay, hold on. Can I give an example of an evaluation group? Yeah, the purpose of an evaluation group is to evaluate the member's level of function. So I'm just going to make one up. Let's say I have a stress management group, and in my first session, I'm going to make it an evaluation group because I want to evaluate where they are in terms of stress management, so I know how best to plan the other sessions. So what's the purpose of an evaluation group? To do the evaluation. What level do the members choose the task again? So they choose the task, or they collaborate in choosing the task at definitely at the basic cooperative, at the supportive cooperative, and the mature. At the lower level, the therapist might be facilitating that. But we want to, as soon as possible, get them involved in choosing the task. Okay, so the app's available if that's of interest to you. I'm not into selling people things, but as a tutor, I've been really pleased with how people have responded to the app. That in general, people are answering more questions using the app than going online to do it. And you can take the questions as many times as you want with the app. Okay, hold on. When it comes to the responsibility of the OT when presenting locations to a patient to go to after they are discharged and they have some kind of cognitive issues, would we automatically have to have a caregiver help them decide where to be discharged to? Or do we still have to present the options to the patient and allow them to pick where they want to go? Okay, so what we do, so it depends on what information we have about this patient and about the family. Unless it says that the patient is legally incompetent and that somebody else is their guardian, we have to include the patient. And the patient has the right to make those decisions. So having some kind of neurocognitive issues doesn't mean that they don't still have the right to be self-determining. So remember that part for clients' rights is important. Yep, there you go. Thank you, Jennifer. Depends on guardianship or power of attorney status. So if somebody has durable power of attorney or they're officially the person's healthcare proxy, they can make decisions for that individual. But you still would want to have the patient in on that decision making unless they've been determined to be incompetent, and it would be harmful for them to be part of that discussion. So remember, somebody can be severely depressed. They can have a neurocognitive disorder, and they still have the right to be self-determining, to make their own choices. Which, by the way, I think is easier to do in person when you see the person than when it's a question. So please know that we do have the review and study guides, both for the OT and the OTA. And so this is the 10th edition for the OT, and the OTA 5th edition isn't out yet. Soon. I don't know when. We're waiting to hear from the printer. I know it's into the printers, and I don't have a cover for that yet. So I'm ready to change my picture. So just realize that if you have questions on the review and study guides, I'm more than happy to answer those, because they really have a lot of content as well as practice exams, and now the artificial intelligence that you can use. Once you complete an exam, you can review them. You can answer them once, but you can review them as many times as you want. And once you complete one, that's when the learning assistant becomes active. We also have ebooks, and they have many really neat features, including the learning assistant embedded in that as well. So this is a unique combination of artificial intelligence with exam preparation. And I'm finding it very helpful, because I think I'm waiting to hear from a lot more people. What I've heard so far is that where it's the most beneficial is that it's quick. It will get you the answer that you're looking for quickly. And the way it's set up and the way it's been explained to me is that the learning assistant filters your question through the review and study guide first, and then it goes out to the web and seeks additional information, brings that back and filters it back through the review and study guide again. So it's more apt to have a correct, reliable answer than a general search on the web. But you know how searches are. It depends on how you phrase it and what keywords you put in there. That's true no matter what you're searching. All right, so please realize that we also have exam prep courses. Let me check the chat. Thanks, everybody. So I'm going to stop the recording for now, but I'm still going to finish answering questions. So everybody have a great evening, and thank you for joining me. Let me just shut this recording off.